Mr. Raven, we are live streaming. We have a quorum. We're ready when you are, sir.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. Good morning. My name is Ricky Raven, and I am chair of the Agency Operations Committee. It is 11:48 a.m., and I would like to call the January 20th Agency Operations Committee meeting to order. Please be aware that this meeting is being held via video conference and is being broadcast via the internet. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome those joining us via video conference and ask that they observe the following etiquette. Number one, please state your name before you speak. Number two, mute your phone when not speaking. And lastly, keep background noise to a minimum. Thank you very much. Members, we will begin with a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. When I call your name, please respond to confirm your attendance. Mr. Anwar. Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Dr. Farias.
Here.
Ms. Schwartz.
Here.
Chairman Stedman.
Here.
Mr. Torn.
Here. Mr. Torn is here.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. McClenny.
Here.
And I'm present. For the purposes of the record, the following individuals are members of this committee: Mr. Anwar, Mr. Campbell, Dr. Farias, Ms. Schwartz, and myself. Please record in the minutes that we have a quorum. The second agenda item is the consideration of approval of the minutes from the October 21st, 2020 committee meeting. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Motion made by Mr. Campbell.
Mr. Anwar.
Sorry, motion by Mr. Torn. Second.
Anwar.
Second made by Mr. Anwar. Any further discussions? Members, I call your name. Please state whether you are voting for or against. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Mr. Anwar.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Dr. Farias.
Aye.
Ms. Schwartz.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 3 is public testimony on the agenda items relating to the Committee on Agency Operations. We do not have anyone registered to testify today, so we will go to the next item. Agenda item 4A is a report on grants and contracts, including those exceeding $1 million. This item does not require any action. Members, the reports were included with the agenda materials that you received prior to the meeting. Ms. Linda Natal, Director of Contracts and Grant Management, and Ms. Nicole Bunker Henderson, General Counsel, are available if you have any questions. Does anyone have any questions? Hearing that there are no questions, we will move to the next agenda item. Agenda item 4B is an update on the 87th Texas Legislature. This item does not require any action. We will hear from Mr. John Wyatt, Senior Director for External Relations, will present the agenda item and is available to answer any questions. Mr. Wyatt, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Raven, Vice Chair Schwartz, and board members. This morning, as mentioned, I'd like to update you on the status of the 87th Texas legislative session and answer any questions that you might have. As you know, the session officially got underway last Tuesday. One of the first orders of business in the Texas House was the election of a new speaker. And Representative Dade Phelan of Beaumont was elected to that position on a vote of 143 to 2. Both chambers also had as an initial order of business adopting the rules for how they will operate in light of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Both the House and the Senate adopted rules that will require members, staff, and the public to wear masks while on the floor or during committee hearings, although those masks may be removed when appropriately socially distanced from others. One difference between the approach of the two chambers is that the Senate will require senators and staff to have a negative COVID test prior to entering the chamber or a committee hearing. The House declined to make that a requirement. The Capitol building will be open to the public with testing available but not required. Visitors will be required to wear masks and maintain social distancing. And each House and Senate office will set its own policies regarding access to their specific office space. And finally, committee hearings will continue largely as they have during the interim, having both options for in-person and virtual testimony. Having adopted the rules, the chambers then adjourned until Tuesday, January 26th. We also got some news on Friday. The Senate announced appointments, committee appointments for the session. Senator Brandon Creighton will continue to chair the Senate Higher Education Committee, and Senator Royce West will continue to serve as vice chair of that committee. However, there will be many new members of the Senate Higher Education Committee. Those are Senators Brian Birdwell, Cesar Blanco, Boris Miles, Angela Paxton, and Drew Springer. Senator Judith Zaffarini, who was appointed to the committee during the interim, will also continue to serve on that committee during the session. Also of note, the state's budget outlook has come into somewhat sharper focus with the comptroller's release of the Biennial Revenue Estimate, or BRE. The BRE informs the legislature of the available revenue they will have to allocate for the upcoming fiscal biennium. The BRE projects that the state will have about $112.5 billion in revenue available for the 2022-23 fiscal biennium. That's a very slight decline of about 0.4% from the current biennium. However, the comptroller also estimated that there will be about $1 billion deficit by the end of the current, i.e. 2020-21 fiscal biennium. And that gap is going to have to be plugged by the legislature in a supplemental appropriations bill during the session. The takeaway is that the state is in a difficult fiscal situation, but not as dire a situation as was projected back in the summer. However, Comptroller Hager did caution that the economic forecast remains clouded with uncertainty, and that the ultimate path of the pandemic and the behavior of consumers and businesses during a resurgence are difficult to gauge. Finally, I want to recognize and thank the staff at the Coordinating Board, who have been working hard to conduct bill analyses, pull data and information, respond to legislator inquiries, and otherwise support the agency's work to assist the legislature. As Commissioner Keller has said, one of our most important duties as an agency is to provide policymakers with objective data and analysis to assist them in making informed decisions regarding higher education policy and funding. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Members, do you have any questions? Hearing none, we will move on to the next item. Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Agenda item 5A is a review of the fiscal year 2021 financial report to the board. This item does not require action. We will hear from Mr. Ken Martin, Assistant Commissioner for Financial Services and Chief Financial Officer, will present this item to the committee and is available for questions. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. This item, as you know, I bring to the committee each quarter, each meeting. At the October committee meeting, I presented the final report for fiscal year 2020. This report is the initial report for fiscal year 2021 for the time period September 1st through November 30th. Really no notable items on there other than, as mentioned before, this does include the budget reduction that we've discussed back in 2020. We made some budget adjustments in 20. We made some budget adjustments in 21 as well. The budget and the report reflects that. Since it is the beginning of the year, really no notable items to highlight, but I'm happy to answer any questions. It does not require approval.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Members, does anyone have any questions of Mr. Martin on this topic? Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to the next item. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Agenda item 5B is consideration of approving the issuance of a request for proposal for selection of a vendor for bond counsel relating to the performance of legal services for the agency in support of the student loan program. Again, we will hear from Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is related to the student loan program, where we issue bonds pretty much on an annual basis to fund the student loans that we issue. The board utilizes the legal services of specialized bond counsel in support of the college access loan program. The student loan program issues private activity, tax-exempt, general obligation bonds to fund the issuance of those student loans. Bond counsel assists the agency staff with complex legal issues concerning the issuance of the tax-exempt general obligation state bonds, as well as maintaining compliance with IRS tax code, Security Exchange Commission rules, and various state laws related to the program. This function is critical for the proper operation and legal compliance of the student loan program. The period for this RFP will be for fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023. The Office of Attorney General recently changed their requirements that outside counsel contracts can only span within a biennium. So this will be for next biennium time period for an amount up to $440,000. What's contemplated in that amount is 2 new bond issues each year of those 2 years within the biennium, as well as if we maintain the favorable market interest rate that we're in today, the refunding of our 2012 and our 2013 bond series to take advantage of favorable interest rates. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Members, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Martin on this issue? Seeing or hearing no questions, do I have a motion to approve the issuance of a request for proposals for selection of a vendor for bond counsel relating to the performance of legal services for the agency in support of the student loan bond program?
So moved.
Have a motion made by Dr. Farias. Second by Ms. Swartz. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Members, when I call your name, please state whether you're voting for or against. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Mr. Anwar?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Dr. Farias?
Aye.
Ms. Swartz?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Consideration of agenda item 5C is the approval of a 2-year extension for the student loan software contract with NailNet. Mr. Martin, again, Assistant Commissioner for Financial Services and Chief Financial Officer, will present this item and be available for questions. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. And I will say that this item and the next agenda item are related. And this item, as you know, we have the student loan program we just discussed, and we've discussed at many prior meetings. The student loan program utilizes software from a vendor, NailNet is our current vendor, to originate, service, and provide collection activities on those loans. This is to request approval for an extension. Our original agreement with NailNet was for an 8-year period, 4 years of the original 2-year options. About 2 years ago, I came before the board, which was approved to invoke the first 2-year option period. This is to request to invoke the last 2-year option period. So at June of 21 is the expiry of the existing option period. This would then invoke from July through June of 2023, which would serve the full 8-year term of the contract. We estimate the maximum cost for this of $1.9 million over this 2-year period. And then the next step I'll discuss in our follow-on agenda item. The lending software environment right now is fairly small. But so we do want to invoke this extension. And then, as I mentioned, we'll kind of discuss what then would be the next steps after expiration of the existing contract. And I ask for your approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Members, does anyone have any questions of Mr. Martin on this issue regarding NailNet? No questions. Do I have a motion to approve a 2-year extension for the student loan software contract with Nelnet? I'll
Emma
make the motion. Do I have a second?
Emma Schwartz.
Anwar, yes.
And Mr. Anwar seconds. Any further discussion? Members, I will call your name. Please state whether you're voting for or against. Mr. Anwar,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Dr. Farias,
Aye.
Ms. Schwartz,
Aye.
and I vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5D is again in consideration of approving the issuance of this request for a proposal for selection of a vendor to provide software for supporting and servicing of the agency's student loan program. Again, Mr. Ken Martin. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and committee members. As mentioned earlier, this item is basically the follow-on. So as we'll get to the end of our current contract, we would like to issue an RFP for solicitation for vendors to see what we can find in the realm of student loan software for a follow-on 8-year period with a maximum amount of $8 million. Again, the main functions within the software that we desire would be the loan origination for student loans, servicing, payments, etc., all the way through to collections. So this is permission that's being requested to issue an RFP up to $8 million for an 8-year term for student loan software. And I request your approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Members, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Martin on this issue? Seeing no one has any questions, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a motion made by Dr. Farias. Do I have a second?
Yeah, Anwar, second, please.
Second motion, seconded by Mr. Anwar. Any further questions or discussions for Mr. Martin on this issue? Hearing no questions, when I call your name, please state voting if you're voting for or against. Those favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Mr. Anwar? Mr. Anwar?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Dr. Farias?
Aye.
Ms. Schwartz?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously. Now we move on to the topic of internal audit. Agenda item 6A is an update on internal audit reports and activities. This item does not require any action. Mr. Mark Pale, Assistant Commissioner, Internal Audit and Compliance, and Mr. Paul Mayer, Assistant Director, Internal Audit and Compliance, will present this item and are available to answer any questions. Mr. Pale or Mr. Mayer, which one do you prefer to go first?
Thank you, Mr. Raven. I'll take over. And good afternoon, members. I have 2 very brief updates for you today for my areas of responsibility. So for this internal audit agenda item, we issued 2 final reports since our prior meeting in October, and both those reports are in your materials. One of the 2 reports was over our agency's contract administration function, and we had 3 recommendations in that report to strengthen internal controls in this area. And the report includes management's corrective actions to address the recommendations. They're in there for your reference. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have on the reports or any other matters regarding internal audit.
Mr. Mayer, do you have anything to add?
I do not. I'm just here playing backup today. Thank you.
It was always good to be a backup. I appreciate that. Thank you. Members, do you have any questions? Hearing none, we will thank you, gentlemen. We will move on to the next item, which is compliance monitoring. Agenda item 7A is an update of compliance monitoring reports and activities. Again, this item does not require any action. Mr. Pale and Mr. Mayer.
Thank you again. Once again, a very short compliance monitoring update to conclude my remarks for the day. Our team completed 3 projects since our update in October. One of those projects was the Title IX related work that I spoke to you about in this morning's cause committee discussion. The other two reports are included in your materials as part of today's AOC work, and neither of those two reports for AOC had any reportable matters to bring to your attention. And that concludes my compliance monitoring update. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pell. Hearing members, do we have any questions for Mr. Pell on this issue? Hearing none, we will move to the final item. Thank you, gentlemen, for your reports. This concludes the agency committee meeting. The time is 12:08. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Campbell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, yes.
Second by Mr. Anwar. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Neither hearing nor seeing any objection, the motion passes. The meeting is adjourned. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Hey.
Great.
Are we still here?